This is WFYI News Now. It's October 16th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, 4 candidates vie for 3 seats on the Wayne Township School Board. Advocates say a waitlist for Medicaid services has created a significant barrier to care for some Hoosiers. And we have a feature story on the race for Indiana Attorney General, which is more competitive this year than it has been in a long time.
So Rokita has, by some measures, overstepped what the Attorney General has a constitutional or a legal authority to do. He's obviously butted heads with some members of his party and certainly with plenty of people across the aisle.
Those stories coming up. But first, the Purple Line is up and running on Indianapolis's east side. After nearly a decade of planning, IndyGo launched its second bus rapid transit line Sunday morning. 2 days into the new service, IndyGo Transit Ambassador Sebastian Caicedo says most riders have responded positively.
Some people are surprised. A lot of people are excited because it does connect the east side and Lawrence to downtown Indianapolis. So
the main difference residents will see along 38th Street is dedicated lanes, painted bright red, where buses travel along a fixed route. Clarence Williams rides the new route to a clinic on 38th Street. The Purple Line replaces other IndyGo lines, and Williams says he looks forward to more frequent, efficient service.
You know, sometimes the 39 don't show up on time, but you got 6 or 7 of these running, so it's all good.
Infrastructure improvements made along 38th Street include repaved roads and expanded sidewalks and crosswalks. The bus stations are also improved with new platforms, pay stations, and arrival times. 4 candidates are vying for 3 at-large seats on the Wayne Township School Board. From WFYI's Education Desk, Sydney Dauphiné has more.
The Wayne Township School Board has 3 open seats this November election. Board members serve a 4-year term. Susan Graves and Karen Burke are the incumbents seeking re-election. Walter Miller and Sherry O'Day Marcotte are also running. Candidates are prioritizing student and staff safety as well as student achievement. Wayne Township residents can vote for all 3 open seats. Early voting has started and Election Day is November 5th. I'm Sydney Dauphiné.
For more information on all Marion County School Board races and a full voter guide to see who's on your ballot in the upcoming election, go to WFYI.org. The Indiana Family and Social Services Administration implemented a waitlist for certain Medicaid services more than 6 months ago. And advocates say it's created a significant barrier to care for medically complex Hoosiers. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Abigail Ruman reports there are more than 13,000 Hoosiers still waiting for home and community-based services through Medicaid.
Jolene Gehring's grandmother was placed on the wait list for the Pathways waiver a couple of months after FSSA implemented it. Gehring says she spent months trying to figure out where her grandmother was on the wait list and how FSSA determined who received an invitation.
On October 3rd, Grandma peacefully passed away upstairs here, still on the wait list for the Medicaid waiver.
Gehring's situation isn't unique. The executive director of the Indiana Assisted Living Association says he talks regularly with Hoosiers across the state with similar experiences. Advocates say FSSA shouldn't have implemented a wait list because it makes it difficult to connect people to services. They say the agency needs to quickly process the wait list and look for ways to get rid of it altogether. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Abigail Ruman.
And for our final story today, the race for Indiana Attorney General is more competitive this year than it's been in a long time. Incumbent Republican Todd Rokita is seen by some as vulnerable, and Democrats have poured money and attention into backing their candidate, Destiny Wells. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports on the dynamics in a race getting national attention.
Destiny Wells worked in the Attorney General's office a few years ago under Todd Rokita's predecessor, and she says everyone she served with there has left the office.
There is not one person left in my correctional litigation section who stayed. And you've seen the institutional knowledge walk out the door.
That's been a criticism of Rokita's tenure amid reports that many longtime staffers departed. Wells says turning that around would be a top priority.
There are great reasons to be a government servant in that office, but you have to be proud of why you're there. And, if you're working under somebody like Todd Rokita and you don't even believe in the litigation that you're putting your name on and you're embarrassed if your name is even on the pleadings.
Rokita's campaign did not respond to multiple requests for an interview. Political scientist Laura Merrifield Wilson says controversies surrounding Rokita's first term are why Democrats feel the race is winnable.
So Rokita has, by some measures, overstepped what the Attorney General has a constitutional or a legal authority to do. He's obviously butted heads with some members of his party and certainly with plenty of people across the aisle.
Many of the controversies link back to Rokita's legal pursuit of Dr. Caitlin Bernard. Bernard performed an abortion on a 10-year-old rape victim in the midst of the state's debate over a near-total abortion ban. Rokita successfully got the state medical licensing board to fine and reprimand Bernard for speaking to a reporter about the case. But his actions also generated a public reprimand from the Indiana Supreme Court against him and spawned multiple disciplinary investigations. Wells has made that a centerpiece of her campaign, including participating in a fundraiser with Bernard. And she says she would approach the job very differently, even as it would be her duty to defend the state's abortion ban.
What we've seen out of the current Attorney General is he's taken his partisan positions and he's used his authorities when it comes to licensing to chill medical care. It is not the Attorney General's job to make the situation even more complicated.
So what does Wells see as the job of the Attorney General? She says refocusing the office's priorities would include an emphasis on labor issues and workers' rights.
Labor trafficking is one because trafficking's already in the Indiana AG's office, in which they're really not paying attention to. But there's also worker misclass, wage theft, issues that the Department of Labor can't wrap their arms around completely either, and neither can local prosecutors.
And Wells's positions have attracted some big-dollar donations, including from labor groups. But Rokita is still by far the favorite, with a clear financial advantage and some labor endorsements of his own. Wilson says part of the advantage is because the Attorney General's race has trouble cutting through political noise.
In the presidential election cycle and so many other things going on, I just don't think the race itself captures the same amount of attention that it would in other circumstances.
Donald Trump is very likely to win Indiana this fall, and Wilson notes Rokita has closely aligned himself with Trump.
In a different state, that might be a liability, and maybe some of his actions and behaviors and headlines would be. But given the state of Indiana and given how many races we have, I would think because it's a presidential election cycle that there will be a lot of people take advantage of the straight ticket option and don't even glance at the name or title when casting their ballot.
Wells ran statewide in 2022 in an unsuccessful bid for Secretary of State, and she says she's learned lessons from that run, including the need to encourage people not to vote straight ticket, which allows them to cast their ballot for one party with the push of a single button. But it's an uphill climb in a campaign for an office Democrats haven't won in nearly 3 decades. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
Again, Todd Rokita's campaign did not respond to multiple requests for an interview. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.